Hello everyone, welcome to another YouTube class of Zeta Educare. In this video, we are going to give an introduction to complex numbers. This video is for both the students who have never heard of complex numbers and this is their first introduction, and also for students who know a bit about complex number, because this video is going to give them more insights into complex number. So let's get started with complex numbers. What we will learn in this video is some basic introduction. We will learn the need to go and search numbers beyond real numbers. Then you will also learn some intuitive logics. These logics will help you understand the fact that why do we represent complex numbers the way we do. Then you are also going to learn the geometric significance of all the things that we will talk about, all the properties of complex numbers we will talk about, and we will learn some basic operations on complex numbers. So let's get started. So first, let's talk something about real numbers. So we all know that we represent real numbers on a one-dimensional line called the real number line, and this is represented like this. Here are my natural numbers, here are my negative integers, well, we can find rational numbers here. This is minus half. We can find this is also a rational number, and we can find irrational number here on the real number line. So this is more or less a representation of real number line, and we represent the set of real number by this notation. This is set of all real numbers. To start complex number, I want first to talk about three equations. The first equation is x squared plus 1 equals to 0. The second equation is x squared plus x plus 1 equals to 0. And the third equation is x cubed plus 1 equal to 0. Now let's talk about the first equation. The first equation boils down to x squared is equal to minus 1. Then what is x? There are no number in the set of real numbers that when multiplied by itself gives a negative number. This is not possible for real numbers. That's why we always say that the solution to this equation does not belong to real number, or there are no real solutions. What about? So this equation is done. What about this equation? So for this equation, if you write down the discriminant of this equation, you will find b square is 1 minus 4ac is 4 multiplied by 1 multiplied by 1. So this is negative. And we know when we have a quadratic equation with negative discriminant, there are no real solution. And let's now come to this equation. So for this equation, x cube is equal to 1 minus 1. So x is equal to minus 1. Here in this case, we have found at least one real solution. But the problem with all these three equations is a theorem, and the theorem states polynomials of degree n has exactly n roots. So this is a polynomial of degree 2, so it must have two roots. So we must find two solutions. So this has two roots. So has this equation. This equation also has two roots. Now for this equation there are three roots, and what's common in all these three equations is that two roots are missing. Why they are missing? Because we cannot find any real number, or we cannot find any number from the real number set which satisfies these equations. So let's again come back to this equation. See, if we write x equal to square root of -1, then what? Well, it does not make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Now the question is why? To understand this question, we must understand how we relate mathematical objects to real life objects. Actually, what we do is we always try to find a physical counterpart of a mathematical object and relate it to some object that we see, that we can think about and we can comprehend about. So this squaring thing, like say I am squaring 2, this is 4, this is somehow intuitively related to finding areas, isn't it? So let's say we have a square with sides 2 units, then the area is 4. If it's 1 unit, then the area is 1. If it's 0, that means we have not drawn the square, it's just a point. But what about -1? So if we do -1 whole square, we get -1. That means the area is negative, which is absurd, which does not make any sense. That's why I was telling that x equal to square root of -1 does not make any sense, because if you view square root of -1 from this angle, square root of -1 will be an absurd quantity to you. Let's again come back to real numbers and the real number line. So this time, instead of pointing out our real numbers with a dot, we are going to point out our real numbers with an arrow. So with an arrow, we are pointing out our real numbers. So this is 2 and this is my arrow representing 2. What happens when we multiply 2 with -1? So this is nothing but negation of the number. What happens is this number is rotated through 180 degree, and this is my -2, right? This is a 180 degree rotation. Similarly, if we take the number 1, see, this is my number, this is my 1, and we multiply 1 with -1, that is, we do a negation, it is going to rotate my number with 180 degree, and this is my new number -1. So this is -1, and if we again multiply this result with -1, it will again make a 180 degree rotation and give me my original number 1. Now let's see what happens when we multiply 1 with square root of minus 1. This is nothing but square root of minus 1. Now, can we relate it to rotation? Well, we will see. Now, we bring this result and multiply it with minus 1 again. So, there it is minus 1. Now it's coming to be minus 1. So, we have to do two multiplications or two operations to rotate it through 180 degree. So, this one operation, that means multiplying 1 by minus 1 must be somewhere in between. So, I am claiming that this operation rotates my number 1 with 90 degrees. So, this is my result, square root of minus 1. And if we again multiply it by square root of minus 1, then again a 90 degree rotation, and it becomes minus 1. Now let's see the rest. We take this result and again multiply it by square root of minus 1. This is minus of square root of minus 1. And we take this result and again multiply it by square root of minus 1. This is plus 1. So these two steps have again rotated it through 180 degree. And this step must rotate it through 90 degrees. So this is a 90 degree rotation. So I say my point minus 1, minus of square root of minus 1 is here. And when I multiply it by square root of minus 1 again, it gives another rotation and 90 degree rotation and becomes plus 1. If you do this kind of operation with all these numbers 2, 3, 4 and all the numbers on the real line, you will find another axis being formed perpendicular to this real axis, and on this axis all the weird kind of numbers with negative square root exists on this line which is perpendicular to the real axis. This is why in our books the imaginary axis is taken perpendicular to the real axis, and this is the logic, but I don't think it's written anywhere in normal textbooks. And we name this axis imaginary axis, and all the numbers residing on this axis as imaginary numbers. Okay, so this is how I have represented imaginary numbers. So my imaginary numbers will look like this. Square root of minus 1 is an imaginary number, square root of minus 2 is an imaginary number, and square root of minus 5, square root of minus 100 and so on. These are all imaginary numbers and they lie on this axis, this imaginary axis, and this imaginary axis is perpendicular to the real axis. So these imaginary numbers are perpendicular to real numbers. Now we can represent all the imaginary numbers as some real numbers multiplied by the square root of minus 1. So let's first name this square root of minus 1. So the square root of minus 1, for our convenience, we will call it I. Okay. So this is our I, and we can represent all the imaginary numbers like this: 2i minus 2i, 5i, square root of 3i, and all the imaginary numbers can be represented using I. Now, this symbol that we have just introduced, I, we can do algebra with this symbol just like we can do algebra with x, y, and z. So let's first compare, say, algebra with x and algebra with I. This is pretty standard. Square root of 10 can be written as square root of 5 and square root of 2, right? So square root of minus 100 can be written as square root of 100 to square root of minus 1. This is nothing but 10 square root of minus 1 is I. Like natures are added, just like 5x plus 2x makes 7x, but 5 plus 2x is just 5 plus 2x. Same goes with this symbol I. 5i plus 2i is 7i, but 5 plus 2i is just 5 plus 2i, because 5 is a real number and this 2 multiplied by I, this is an imaginary number. Well, while doing algebra with this symbol I, we must be cautious, because we must, I'll give you an example where the problem comes. We can write square root of 5 multiplied by 2 is square root of 10, right? But when we do algebra with I, this kind of problems come. Square root of 5 multiplied by square root of minus 2, we cannot write this as square root of minus 5 multiplied by square minus 2. This we can't do, because this is nothing but 5i and this is nothing but 2i. So this is nothing but 10i square, which is minus 10. So whenever we have this kind of thing, square root of minus 5, we have to respect this square root of minus 1 first. Make it square root of 5i. Then we do the operations. Now we have already introduced the concept of imaginary number. Imaginary numbers are numbers which lie on the imaginary axis, and the axis is perpendicular to the real axis or the real number line. And now we will define complex numbers. Complex numbers are numbers which have both real and imaginary parts. Okay, so complex number is just a mixture of real numbers and complex numbers. So this is our real part and this is our imaginary number, and this b is known as the imaginary part. Now this real part, if we again draw the real axis and the imaginary axis, this real part lies on the real axis and the imaginary part lies on the imaginary axis, and the resultant kind of this is our complex number. So let's understand now this kind of diagrams and represent complex numbers as geometric objects. So let us now represent complex numbers geometrically. Say I have a complex number a1 plus ib1, and I want to represent that number in this Argand plane. And we have an x-axis which corresponds to real number axis, and an y-axis which is the imaginary number axis. See, this complex number is nothing but this point P, which is a1, which have a length of a1 in the direction of real axis, and which has a length of b1 in the direction of the imaginary axis. And this is my complex number, this point. And we can also represent this complex number a1 plus ib1 with the help of the length of the line drawn, this length of the line segment OP from origin to that particular point P, and with the help of an angle theta. Let's say the length of this is r. Then we can represent this complex number with a length and with an angle. So we can also represent complex number with lengths and angles. Now if this is theta, then by standard trigonometry rules we can find this is r cos theta, and this is r sin theta. So a1, so this is a1 and b1. So a1 is r cos theta, and b1 is r sin theta. Now this z1 can be written as r cos theta plus I r sin theta. If you take r common, this is cos theta plus I sin theta, and this cos theta plus I sin theta is equal to e to the power I theta. So I have used cos theta plus I sin theta is equal to e to the power I theta. This is known as Euler's formula. You can Google it up and you will get pretty much decent amount of information from the Wikipedia page of Euler's formula. And this length r has a formal name. This is called the modulus of the complex number and written as mod z1, and this theta is also called the argument of z1, and it's represented like this arc z1. And one thing to note that this argument of z1, for the principal value of argument, this argument of z1 lies between minus pi to pi. So now we will talk about addition. We'll talk about addition of complex numbers. So in case of complex numbers, the real and the imaginary parts add independently. That is, if we have two complex numbers a1 plus ib1, and a2 plus ib2, then the real parts will be added independently and the complex parts will be added independently. This is pretty straightforward. So this is our algebraic way of doing it. Let's take an example. Say 5 plus 4i plus 3 plus 2i. What will be the result? So we will add 5 and 3 together, and this is 8, plus we will add 4 and 2 together, that will be 6, and with I this is going to be 6i. So 8 plus 6i is the answer. Now let's see what is this addition doing geometrically. To understand it geometrically, we have to again draw this Argand plane. This is my real axis and this is my imaginary axis. Let's name this Z1, name this Z2, and this as Z3. So this, let's say this is my 5 plus 4i, 5 plus 4i, this complex number, and this is 3 plus 2i, that is Z2. If we add these two, then we will get this. This is my 8 plus 6i, that is Z3. See, if you look closely, this geometric representation of the addition of complex number resembles to the vector addition rule. So complex numbers add the same way two-dimensional vectors add. Now let's come to complex multiplication. So I want to multiply two complex numbers, say 4 plus 3i and 1 plus 2i. Well, this is also pretty easy. I will multiply term by term. So this is 4 plus 2i plus 3i plus 6i square. Now I square, I know it as -1, so this is going to be, this term is going to be -6. So I am getting ultimate result as -2 plus 5i. So this is the algebraic way of doing it. This is pretty straightforward. Now let's see what it is doing geometrically. Okay, I will not draw any diagram for this. I will use the r e to the power I theta representation of complex number to show what it does geometrically. See, I have two complex number, r1 e to the power I theta 1 and r2 e to the power I theta 2. If I multiply these two complex number in this form, then I can see what's happening. Actually, it will be r1 r2 e to the power I theta 1 plus theta 2. So while doing complex multiplication, the lengths or the modulus, they multiplies and the angles add up. Number division is done by kind of an analogous process to rationalization. Here what we do is we try to make the denominator real. So what do I have to multiply to the denominator to make it real? I have to multiply it with 1 minus 2i. So this is 1 minus 2i. So if you do this calculation, you will get a real number here, and the multiplication will give you a complex number here, and then you represent it in form of a plus ib form. That will be the answer of your division. Now let's see what division does geometrically. This is also straightforward. Say I want to divide two complex numbers. What will happen is the result will have a magnitude or will have a modulus of r1 by r2, and the angle will be theta 1 minus theta 2. Now let's talk about another important concept in complex number, that is the concept of complex conjugates. See, if Z1 is represented as A plus IB, is A1 plus IB1, then we write the complex conjugate of Z1, we write it as Z1 star. This is nothing but A1 minus IB1. So what we do is we flip the sign of the imaginary part. Okay, so this is complex conjugation, and this Z1 is the complex number and Z1 star is the complex conjugate of Z1. Next, let's come to this equation. See, we started with this equation, right? X cube minus 1 equal to 0, and we wanted to find what is the value of x. So we found one solution, x equal to 1, right? What are the other solutions? What are the other two solutions of x? That we will try to find out. So x cube minus 1, we can write it as x minus 1 x square plus x plus 1 equal to 0. This first fraction gives us the real solution, and this equated to 0, x square plus x plus 1 equated to 0 is going to give us the the complex number solutions. So x square plus x plus 1 equal to 0. So let's find out x. By the quadratic formula, we can write it as minus 1 plus minus root over minus 1 plus 1 minus 4 divided by 2. So there are two solutions. The two solutions are minus half plus square root of minus 3 by 2 and minus half minus square root of minus 3 by 2. These are my two solutions. Well, I can also write this as minus half plus square root of 3 by 2i and minus half minus square root of 3 by 2i. See, you can see that these two solutions are complex conjugate of each other. So you do complex conjugate of this root, you will get the complex conjugate of, you get the another root. Now these two solutions of the equation x cube minus 1 equal to 0 is denoted as omega and omega square. Well, why this is omega square? You can find it out if you write omega as half plus root 3 by 2i, you do the square, that is you multiply it by itself and you will get this number. Try it by yourself. Now we have found all the three roots of the equation x cube minus 1 equal to 0. Now what about omega cube? If you do omega cube, you will find omega square multiplied by omega, which is nothing but minus omega square multiplied by omega, which is equal to 1. So omega cube is 1, because omega satisfies this equation. Omega x cube minus 1 equal to 0, so omega cube minus 1 equal to 0, so omega cube is 1, and omega also satisfies this equation, x square plus x plus 1 equal to 0, so we find omega square plus omega plus 1 equal to 0. These two relations are important relations, because these relations you will get a lot of These two relations are important relations, and how to use these two relations to do numerical problems, that we will learn in the next class, where we will be doing maths problem of the concepts that we are learning now. Next, let's try to find the solution to the equation x cube minus 1 equal to 0, in a geometric way, more kind of an intuitive way. So if we rewrite this equation, this will be x cube equal to 1, right? So we have to find x such that we multiply x and x, this is going to be 1. Now one solution is already already know, that is x equal to 1, that is the trivial solution. Now we want to find two more solutions. So if we remember the concept of multiplication of complex numbers, well, what multiplication does geometrically is add angles, right? So this must be in some form of e to the power I theta, and this theta is getting multiplied, this is getting added 3 times, and this 3 times, while it gets added, the phase cancels out. So here we do not have any angle, so this must be like this. So it has to cover 360 degree, right? And 360 degree divided by 3 is 120 degree. So I claim that the one of the solutions of x cube minus 1 equal to 0 is a complex number with length 1 and an angle of 120 degree, because this 120 degree added 3 times will give me 360 degree, right? So let's write down our solution. This will be 1 e to the power I, and theta has to be written in radians, so 120 pi by 180. This is e to the power I 2 pi, I into 2 pi by 3. Now this is my solution to this equation x cube equal to 1, but this is written in the polar format. Let's bring it back to Cartesian format. To bring it back to Cartesian format, what we have to do is we have to apply Euler's law. This is cos 2 pi by 3 plus I sin 2 pi by 3. Cos 2 pi by 3 is minus half, and I sin 2 pi by 3 is root 3 by 2. So this is exactly equal to the solution that we got here. So this, I have found one solution. Okay, how to find the other solution? Well, we have to find the other solution, we have to take the angle clockwise. This is 120 degree and the length is 1. You can do this, you can find out the other angle, other solution also using the same method, and that will be minus half minus I root 3 by 2, which is the representation of the polar format, to the power minus I 2 pi by 3. So introduction to complex numbers ends here. In the next class, we will do some problems with the concepts that you have learned today, and you will see that by doing more and more problems, you will understand the concepts more clearly, and that's the whole point. You have to practice thoroughly, and you have to practice again and again to get a good grasp of all the concepts that you learn in mathematics.